surface geology and, of course, water geology in this area. But I do a lot of karst management work, which is a little bit different than the water, and it's a different system completely. But I've been working with birds here now 51 years. And what I've established, birds have excellent recall memory. They remember where they have been and where food and water is. And I've built my whole business concept of recall ability of birds. They come back over and over year after. About 5 gallons of sugar water just to one species of hummingbirds here. There's a female on that feeder right there.
The red solution?
It takes 8 of those birds to weigh 1 ounce. So you're looking at little bitty birds. They have a very high metabolism. Body temperature will run from 105 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. So they are a little dynamo as far as temperature goes.
It's about, what, 4 grams per bird, I think?
It takes
4 grams?
about 3.5 grams per ounce is what, 3.1 to 3.5 or 6 for the male, female. Females are a little bit heavier than the males.
Wing speed is something ridiculous. I don't remember what it is.
Well, wing beat, when they're hovering, it'll vary 40, 45 wing beats a second. And you're looking at pectoral muscles flexing and unflexing back and forth. So, and the wings don't beat up and down. They have ability to control their 5 terminal feathers on their wing. They can cup the air any way they want to back up, down, whatever. They can actually fly upside down. And what I've established here with one thing, and that's the recall ability of all species of birds, but primarily hummingbirds. They'll return to the same feeder every year. The same females will build oftentimes a nest in the same limb that they were built a nest in last year. So it's fascinating what is going on here. It really is. We're learning a lot about nature and what goes on. I do control a lot of predators here on the ranch. We have not a big ranch, about 1,200 acres here, and we're doing a lot of things behind the scene to make this happen. I guess nearly all birds have predators, particularly the larger birds, but the small birds don't have much. They really don't. So I work very closely with federal and state authorities on what I'm doing here. Questions on anything?
Do the flat-chinned hummingbirds migrate through?
They do migrate. These birds here are resident birds here. Some of the species will go from Central America, southern Mexico. They're classified as a mountain bird. They live in the high Sierra Madres, Colima and Oaxaca, Mexico. I've been there in the wintertime. Hummingbirds everywhere. What a lot of people don't have concept on, these birds are insectivorous. They have to have the amino acid chain of protein. So that's the reason they're there in high Sierra Madres, because of small, soft-bodied insects. And they do migrate 20, 30 miles a day, but they can do extreme distances if they have to. But some of these birds, this species, will go as far north as southern Canada and the Rocky Mountain area. And of course, this is home to this particular group here. They don't go any further north. This is home to them. And that's fine. It works out really good.
How many do you have? And how do you count?
The state ornithology that has worked with me on birds and primarily this species of hummingbird has estimated my sugar concentration in water is about 1 to 3, 1 to 3.5. It's a little bit sweeter than what they publish. And it's because I'm familiar with the nectar in flowers and the sugar content of the flowers. And that will run from a low of 16% to a high of 32%. So I'm doing the scientific approach to what I'm doing here. So I'm feeding about a 1 to 3, 1 to 3.5 water-sugar ratio. And that does work. What the state ornithologist has extrapolated, we're looking at, and I disagree with him, 1,400 birds per gallon of water per day. Well, we're feeding 5 gallons of sugar water a day right now. And every feeder I take down when they're empty, and they'll last a couple of days here, I'll wash them up, clean them up completely, and refill them and hang them back up again. So it's a lot of labor involved. I think there's a little less than 1,400 birds per gallon. I really think it's closer to 1,200 birds per gallon.
But that's still 6,000 birds?
Yeah. So we do bird banding. On this ranch, we banded 148 species of birds and over 45,000 birds. So we put a little band on their leg. It's got a serial number. That's their code. We put it on there for the rest of their life. What we've determined, we find out basically how long they live, where they go to, and a lot of other things about them. We're recapturing between 22 and 25% of the birds when we catch them. So it's kind of interesting there to see that in our method there, we're catching, these birds know exactly where they are and they come back. The oldest female bird, the oldest bird we've caught now is a female, 10 years of age.
For a hummingbird?
For a hummingbird.
That's got to be exceptionally long.
That is longer than we have ever thought. We've got quite a few 9-year-old birds and a lot of 8-year-old birds. So all of this is starting to be some good signs. I don't know where we're going with this. I really don't care. It's all right. We're having a lot of fun with it. It's a business with me. Our guest cottages, our clientele comes back over and over and over again. So, and we get people from all over the United States and England. So it works. It's a different mode of tourism. And people like to get out on a West Texas ranch where they can explore and, you know, they can walk as long as they want to. We have electric golf carts for them now.
Right.
And that works. People say they want to walk, but when they have a choice, they'll take an electric golf cart. It's okay.
The size of a hummingbird egg is like what, maybe my small fingernail or something like that?
Yeah, and I might be able to use a simile on it if I could. Look.
Jelly bean or something?
I'm looking for, and I don't have it, the little Tic Tacs you see in a grocery store, the little red mints.
Small mints.
Yeah, and that's about the size and shape of a hummingbird egg. That doesn't mean anything to you, basically, but that one egg is about 18% of a female's body weight.
Does she lay a single egg?
And she lays 2 of them, an egg about every 2 days. What happens after that? Now let's extrapolate that into human terms so you ladies can relate to it. But you're looking at the equivalent 150-pound woman giving birth to a 35-pound baby. And she does that twice. So it's a heck of a drain on her system and all, and that's that's reality.
Do they nest? Do they make little nests?
Yeah, they make a nest in part minute, huh?
There.
These are about the size and shape of a hummingbird egg. So it'll give you a pretty good physical idea of what the little female's going with. It takes her a week to build a nest that's camouflaged. It's got spider webs on it. It's got lichens, which is an air plant that grows on dead limbs here on the ranch. And what is unique about it, this particular nest, this is last year's nest. This is the year before. You know,
Rebuilt.
flip the first light switch on over there. But this gives you an idea of the construction of the nest. You can pass it around, going on with it. Now this little dot right here is the typical band that we put on the left leg of a hummingbird, male and female. And it's got a letter and 5 numbers on it. And it takes optivisors to do this kind of work. And among other things that I do, I cut gemstones. I cut the angles on gemstones. It's called faceting. Where I don't cut diamonds, but I cut all the other colored gemstones. So I have the optical equipment to do this, and the bird banders have to have eye-hand coordination. This isn't for everybody to do. And this is all under federal permit. Pass that around. You might be able to see the little dot there. You're looking at the wrong side, but I guess you know what you're looking at.
That's what he puts on the little birds.
But it gives you a concept. When we recapture these birds, we learn a lot about them. When we first catch a bird,
Yes.
we can identify whether it was hatched this year or after this year. And so a hatch year bird has got a lot of different measurements on their bill length and their wing card and the body weight. So all of this is recorded. So that serial number is on that bird, and so we can reference that by computer as to who banded that bird, where it was, and all the other pertinent data there. Pretty interesting.
I would say some of them also
Yeah, it's
spectacular
different.
from a biology aspect. Remote sensors, like
Been all over Mexico, and I love the country, the culture, all that goes with it. But I used to be, I was asked to go into a business with a partner in mining on optical grade calcite. And at that time, it was the same value as gold, $35 an ounce. And he was bringing out boxes of it and selling it down to Houston. So from that point, I told him that business would shut down once Nassau quit buying calcite. And this is optical ray for their telescopes and microscopes. So we went into tourism in Copper Canyon. And I built the first motel in Copper Canyon in Mexico. Any of you may have heard of that country, Puerto Juarez. And
Copper Canyon is a canyon in Mexico that's equivalent to almost like the Grand Canyon of the United States, I guess. But there's a train that leaves the Texas-New Mexico line, or used to, and went down through the canyon to the coast, right?
no, they go to Baja California.
Classification
I thought you could catch one in
Silicat.
Okinawa and ride off.
Le vide l'équipement
No,
Silicat.
that's Okinawa, that's Rio Grande. They're going,
J'aime les birds.
go east and then Belfast and then north.
Okay.
Little birds.
Yeah, they-
Birds will not
what I started doing in Mexico, I began buying big mineral specimens from the miners. I would dress up more like this and speak the language and know the customs. And I would go back in the mountains and ask for permission to go into mines. And the miners would always have big mineral specimens. And I would buy those and take them to the Dallas gift market at that time. And it was very lucrative. I was the first one to ever do that. And since I had a mineral geography background, I could ID these minerals and all. It worked out very good. So from that point, that market kind of fell out, and so I got into faceting of gemstones. And I got a lot of gemstones, mainly topaz, but I got a lot of other colored stones as well. So if you're ranching, you better diversify, and I've diversified, basically what it is. But the Brazilian agates you're seeing there, I still have about 22 tons of the lapidary rough materials of agates, rhyolites, jaspers from all over the world. Quite a bit of stuff from India. Some of the black skin agate is beautiful. It's got a lot of dendritic inclusions in it, very similar to the Montana agate. So, and they have one green tree as well. That's a beautiful white quartz with green mineral chromium laced through it. But, you know, you go with the flow, you change. If the economics change, you change with it. So I have.
That's awesome.
You've got to be resilient, you know, and I have, and I've got a lot of experience. But let's talk a little bit about something here of what you're interested in. Years ago, I lived on a 5-section ranch south of here, 5 square miles. And it was the El Dorado Divide. This is the Edwards Plateau down south of us. It's a Cretaceous formation. And the upper part of that Cretaceous formation is called Buda. It's the very top of the Cretaceous. The hill over here, when you leave, you look at the Cap Rock, and that's Buda. And it's an extreme karst area. I've got a satellite picture here I'll show you, and you can pass this around and look at it. This is a picture of 5 square miles, 2 square miles here and 3 here. The divide area, the elevation here above sea level is about 2440, 2,400. And this runs from the little town of El Dorado here about 20 miles north and east. And you'll see the black areas here, and that's Playa Lakes where cave structures have collapsed over geologic time. And a lot of people, you folks are in geology, so you can wrap your mind around geologic table. A lot of people, they don't know, have any guesstimation of what geologic time means. But this is where these caves have collapsed. And years ago, I was working in a karst area here where air was sucking and blowing, and I'd take a little cotton string and light the end of it and drop it down a little hole. Some days the air would blow out, some days it would suck air. And then the idea came into a cave structure. So I have excavated in this one little Playa Lake here, about 85 feet vertical, actually a tunnel in solid rock, about 140 feet, following solution holes. Limestone is very porous, as you know, and some areas much more porous than others. I was hoping to open up a cave like Sonora Caverns, which some of you may have been to, I hope you have, which is, it's a beautiful cave, and it's worth your time and effort to make a trip to it. It's probably the prettiest cave in Texas, and It's all Cretaceous limestone in this basic same geologic area. So what I've done, I needed to sell this ranch. My brother and I owned it jointly. And I was doing the work and he wasn't, so I decided I'm going to sell it, do my own thing. So it worked out. I asked our Soil Conservation Service for a satellite picture of the ranch. What they came up was this, and this was taken in February, wintertime, cold, using infrared technology by satellite. And the whole area here showed hot. The heat is, the red is where it shows hot. And so my thoughts go back to 20 years earlier. We have a little rodent that lived on that whole area that burrows into the ground. We call them prairie dogs. And it is a rodent animal. And they lived in that area, and I understand why now, because this is heat coming from a karst cave area, coming vertically through the limestone cracks in the rocks there to the surface dirt spreading out. So on a satellite it shows. So the technology out now is, with thermal imaging technology, you can take this same thing, and they have it handheld. You can fly at nighttime after a norther comes through. You have a pressure drop in atmospheric pressure, and the warm air down below is 70 degrees and about 95% humidity. So you have this warm air coming out, and you can see that with the technology now. Not that it's important, but sometimes a cave that you can open up can be a very lucrative business. So if you're looking at tourism like I do here, and I'm looking at interest of people, that works. Offshoot of that is, and I know of one resident house here that has drilled a water well and they hit a cavern, and twice a day they'll have 70-degree, 95% humidity air flowing into their house from this cave. They have a little butterfly valve on it. After the sun goes down, the cave recharges and it sucks the air in again. So they're looking at an automatic air conditioning heating year-round at 70 degrees. No pollen, no dust, no nothing, perfect. So extrapolate that idea in your minds later on in your lives here, that you might be able to utilize nature, a cave structure there, as a place to live or for whatever reason, business reason. But something to play with, because if you don't diversify, you got a problem anyway, particularly in West Texas here. So I have diversified. So what you're looking at here, we're looking at again, a modified karst area, and we do have vertical and horizontal shales in this line. It's the lower part of the Cretaceous Formation. If you drill deep into that blue shale, you're going to have artesian sulfur. So the well drillers here know when they hit the blue shale, and I'm walking around the backside of a drilling rig smelling, and when I pick up a big odor of salt, and one's taking the transmitter, one receiver, and you're watching the differential of that signal as it is bouncing across the world, and it's being absorbed underground by a wet area, whether it could be caliche, clay, or it could be water formation. So I have crisscrossed this whole area with VLF seismic area here. I know exactly where the water flows, and it's in channels flowing out to the north and west, and it comes out of the ground over here about a half a mile away. And if you're interested in that, we can drive the students over there to see that. But it kind of gives you a little better concept, and if you can drill a well 50 feet off of this seismic signal, and it's dry. You miss it completely. And you're looking at these fractures there that are conduit the water across the terrain here. And a lot of people just don't understand that. They just think if anywhere you drill there may be water. Well, you better have some science behind it. And so this is what I do. I'm looking at the technical side of it. And I don't know anybody in the county that's ever done VLF seismic. But maybe they will. And let me give you one other story here that you need to think about. And the way I learned this, there's a company in Austin that rents all of this seismic equipment. They've got all types of it. And some of it's airborne and some is not. And so I've rented the equipment several times from them. And the company said a person that is very familiar with this is in Florida. So I called this man and asked him the operation, how do you do it and all, and he said, let me tell you. The government hired me and my crew to go down to Fort Stockton, which is about 150 miles southwest of here, and do a seismic line south and east for a couple hundred miles. Well, it blew my mind what the government is looking for. And they were using the same exact instrument that I was using, and they computerize it, and they have a survey line they're following on, and they go along and hit an anomaly where the signal changes. They'll mark it on their maps and keep going, they'll hit another one. And then they'll come back and work that area in about a mile square around that. They'll pinpoint the exact location that they want to drill a big borehole. And I'm talking about something that's 2.5 feet diameter. And they'll cut a hole into that and they get some of the biggest caves you can ever imagine. And they would lower 2 men down into these caves to guesstimate what they're looking at. And they would put an orifice plate in a plate on top of this. And they're recording this. I'm familiar with gas measurement with orifice and pipes. So you're seeing a flow of air come up and they're reading the differential pressure and the differential across this orifice plate. So what you're looking at then, you put it on a chart and you can calculate exactly the volume of air coming through that, whether it's water, whether it's gas, propane, whatever. You can create this volume. So that's what they can calculate, the volume of these huge, huge caves there, and they're humongous. So I have no idea what the federal government is doing that. Nobody does know. And it's probably lost in their archives. But what they did after they finished that went into the Federals. They came back on these big areas, put a big plate of solid steel over it, put cement across that, they sealed it up. Even the ranchers don't know the caves are there. And I'm extrapolating this. This is close to the I-10 highway. That, gosh, that would be one hellacious good tourist visitation, like Sonora Catholic.
Continua.
Well,
Yeah.
it would be
So